Hey guys, today I'll show you a sci-fi thriller TV series named Alice in Borderland Season 2. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. The drama begins on the once bustling city streets that had somehow become eerily desolate. 4 curious individuals surveyed their surroundings, only to have their attention snatched by several cars speeding towards them from a distance. A group of young men and women disembarked, claiming to be here for a game. But before anyone could process what was happening, a bullet took a life. This was the harsh reality of a brutal survival game. A powerful anti-tank rifle mercilessly reaping lives. Everyone scattered in fear for their shitty lives. But how could human legs compete with the speed of a bullet? The moment they're exposed in the open, death could arrive at any second. Previously on Season 1, Alice was originally a gaming recluse, but he had inadvertently landed in this cruel game world of survival. Here, people needed to pass one game level after another to earn precious days of survival. Alice managed to clear all the games, collecting a set of poker cards representing game difficulty levels from 1 to 10. But instead of attaining freedom, he was still trapped in the game world and thrust into the second phase of the challenge. This was a life and death escape set in an entire city. The first level was the highest difficulty, the King of Spades. Alice and the girl Yuzuha hid behind a car, successfully evading the initial onslaught. They saw the attacker was relentless like a grim reaper, killing the gamers without hesitation. Suddenly, an old-fashioned sedan pulled up. Alice saw the coroner, Anne, coming to his rescue. He quickly dove into the car. He had cracked the key to pass the game. It was a survival battle of strength, requiring no particular skill. If they could take out the fully armed man in black, they could clear the level. But for unarmed gamers, this was a daunting task. As they discussed their plan, the man in black neatly eliminated several players in another car and was quickly catching up. Anne quickly swapped places with the driver, the rookie boy, and floored the pedal. The car swerved left and right, skillfully navigating around obstacles. But the relentless pursuer was hot on the trail, periodically firing bursts from a machine gun. A fast and furious car chase ensued. The pedestrians on the street were powerless against the hunting wheels. Anne was so shocked by the enemy's brutality that she crashed into a vehicle in the middle of the road. Luckily, the noise attracted other players, and the man in black shifted his target to indiscriminate attacks. Alice and the others seized the opportunity to escape into a deserted alley, narrowly avoiding disaster. However, Anne, who had to rescue someone, got separated from Alice and the others. They knew they were far from clearing the level. After a brief rest, the rookie boy and the sexy girl Hikari decided to secure another vehicle while Alice and Yuzuha gathered supplies. They had to prepare for a prolonged battle. Alice hoped to clear all the games as soon as possible and return to his normal life where friends and family awaited. But Yuzuha didn't share his sentiment. Her father was framed for faking his successful climbing of Mount Everest and lost everything, eventually taking his own life. Yuzuha, who had always enjoyed extreme sports, started to loathe her former world, preferring the thrill of their current situation. The bond they developed through shared hardship seemed to grow distant in that moment. Early the next day, Alice went up to the rooftop. In the sky, he saw a multitude of different suits of cards floating. All at once, he realized that the entire city had been divided into different game zones. The suits of cards floating above represented different game types. What they experienced yesterday represented a physical escape game symbolized by the spades. This was not everyone's strong suit. Their greatest advantage was unity in overcoming challenges. Teamwork-based games were their best option. Immediately, the group of 4 drove to the corresponding club's area. In front of a shipping container were 4 wristbands. However, the sign indicated that the game required 5 players to start. As they were wondering about this, Suguru, who had surprisingly survived from the previous game, suddenly appeared. The 5th wristband was already on his wrist. The group immediately showed expressions of disgust, as the man before them was the adversary from the first phase of the game. It was unthinkable to team up with him, but Alice quickly recognized the situation. Once the wristband was put on, it couldn't be removed. They didn't have another choice. Everyone agreed with him and went forward to pick up the wristbands. The 5-person team was finally assembled and the door to the game area opened. Alice and the others walked in apprehensively. When they reached the open space in the center, another 5 figures slowly emerged from behind the shipping container. That was their opposing team, and it was a brutal team combat game between 2 sides. The losing side would be wiped out completely. According to the game rules, each team started with 10,000 points, and the team with the highest score within 2 hours would win. There were 3 ways to score points: battles, items, and bases. The initial 10,000 points could be distributed among team members as they wished. As soon as opposing team members made physical contact, a battle would begin. The side with the higher score would win, taking 500 points from the loser. If team members from the same side made physical contact, they would fight with the sum of their scores. The second way to score was through items. The entire game area hid 6 items with different points. Touching an item would grant the corresponding points. The final way was through the base competition. Both sides had a metal ball base. Touching the opponent's base would earn 10,000 points. If they touched their own base, they would temporarily have an infinite score. At this point, if they touched an enemy player, they could take 10,000 points from them. Anyone with a negative score would be eliminated on the spot. As the countdown ended, the life and death battle officially began. Alice and the others assigned the rookie boy to guard their base, giving him only the minimum score. The other 4 were divided into pairs, one with a high score and the other with a low score. If they encountered a member of the opposing team, the 2 teammates could fight as a duo with their combined scores. This strategy gave them a high probability of winning and snatching 500 points. Notably, Alice and Hikari found an item in a shipping container, instantly adding 2,000 points. After the first round, Alice's team had 13,500 points, leading their opponents by 5,000 points. There was a drawback, however. After a change in score, their wristbands would become inactive, preventing further scoring or point loss. If they touched an opponent during this inactive state, their wristbands would release a powerful electric current. The only way to reactivate them was to touch their own base. This condition limited the number of times they could engage in fights. Just as everyone was celebrating their lead, the opposing team seemed unconcerned. They had a trump card up their sleeve. Meanwhile, the rookie boy, who was guarding their base, noticed 4 members of the opposing team approaching. He quickly touched his base, making his score infinitely high. If he touched anyone, they would lose points, and if their score turned negative, they would be eliminated. Surprisingly, the 4 members didn't care and rushed towards the base. As the rookie boy let out a chicken cry, he could only touch 1 person. The other 3 managed to touch the base, resulting in a net gain of 10,000 points. Their strategy was to sacrifice 1 member's life to increase the score of the entire team. Alice and his team were taken aback. Their total score was no longer superior, and even their individual scores couldn't compete with their opponents. Alice had no choice but to split his team to search for items while avoiding combat. This approach made them quite passive, and their efficiency in collecting items significantly decreased. As a result, their score lagged behind more and more. Most of the items had been found by the opposing team, leaving only 1 worth 2,500 points. Alice's team returned to their base, disheartened, with a deficit of more than 10,000 points. They knew they couldn't win relying solely on combat and items. An idea suddenly struck Alice. He was about to clear the inactive state of his wristband, but pulled back. He thought of a way to turn the game around, to exploit the rule that a powerful electric current would be released in the inactive state and try to infiltrate the opponent's base. Although it was risky, it was the only option they had. By now, the opposing team believed that as long as they defended their base, they would have a sure win situation. Just then, Yuzuha appeared nearby. She said she only had 50 points left. Realizing that, an opponent perked up and started to chase her. As long as he could touch this girl's body, she was sure to be eliminated. He quickly pursued her, believing that with 3 others of his team guarding the base, nothing could go wrong. No sooner had the 2 left than Alice, Hikari, and Suguru arrived at the base. The 3 opponents quickly touched their iron rod, making their scores infinitely high. Unfazed, Alice's trio charged at them. Using his inactive state, Alice electrocuted the opposing team leader who touched him. Suguru quickly moved forward and successfully touched the base. After becoming inactive, he electrocuted another opponent. This was a great opportunity for Hikari. Unfortunately, the other opponent managed to stand up and kicked her sexy body far away like a toy. While Alice's team had managed to recover some points, they were still 3,000 points behind their opponents. Elsewhere, Yuzuha, relying on her agility, made a long jump. The opponent followed closely, tracing her body smell, but ended up colliding with a shipping container, enabling Yuzuha to break free. However, like Alice and the others, she soon fell into despair. With only 15 minutes remaining, they had no hope of turning the game around. The rookie boy was sitting in a daze at their base, and Hikari chose to lay low in a corner. Only Yuzuha refused to give up easily. She decided to search for the remaining scoring item. Surprisingly, she found the 2,500-point item within a few minutes. The score difference was now only 500 points. Alice rekindled his hope. He decided to take a risk and attack the enemy base again, regardless of success or failure. Yuzuha was preparing to accompany him, but was stopped by her teammate Suguru. He seemed like a different person, coughing up blood non-stop. His health had been deteriorating, and now that the game seemed hopeless, his malicious nature surfaced. Before his death, he decided to derive some hormone pleasure from Yuzuha, believing that she was sexy enough for him to die with. When she resisted using her chicken strength, Suguru knocked her out with a strong blow. Alice's team was now scattered, and it was all up to Alice to turn the game around. With just 7 minutes left until the end, Alice's team was trailing by 500 points. Most of the members had given up and even began to inflict harm on each other. Fortunately, Alice happened to pass by and he gave Suguru a good beating. The rookie boy who had been guarding their base was filled with self-reproach. It was his failed defense during the game that had cost the team 10,000 points. He decided to take action to make up for his mistake. When Alice returned to the base carrying an unconscious Yuzuha, he found that the rookie boy was gone. He then headed towards the opponent's base. Halfway there, he happened to encounter the opposing team's leader standing by the sea. Alice, looking dejected, conceded that the opponent was a competent team leader. He then raised his arm to shake hands with him. The opponent team leader, confident with his score of over 10,000, wasn't afraid of physical contact. However, the moment they shook hands, a change in score occurred. Alice's team had unexpectedly gained 500 points. The team leader was incredulous, seeing that Alice had more points than his own. It turns out, just a few minutes earlier, Alice had noticed the rookie boy was not at the base. After searching around, he found him trying to sever his arm with an iron door. Alice tried to stop him. That's when the rookie boy revealed his plan. He still had over 10,000 points. If he could remove his iron bracelet and give it to Alice, their points could be combined, potentially defeating an opponent and turning the tide of the game. Alice initially disagreed with such a drastic approach. However, feeling the rookie boy's resolution to die for the team, he reluctantly shut the iron door. The rookie boy's bracelet came off as planned, and upon contact, Alice indeed gained an extra 10,000 points. With this unexpected move, they barely won against the opposing team leader. However, upon realizing his imminent defeat, the opposing leader did not show any signs of disappointment. Instead, he seemed relieved. He had previously cleared all the difficult games, yet had not returned to the real world. Instead, he became an official staff member here, specifically opposing the game players. He was tired of this endless cycle of killing. The other members of his team also felt a sense of relief. In the next moment, several laser beams fell from the sky, and all the members of the opposing team were wiped out. This was the price of losing the game. Nevertheless, Alice could not bring himself to feel happy at this moment. Even though they had won, they could only live a few more days. He wondered what exactly this world was and how he could return to reality. On the other side, Yuzuha and Hikari, having heard of their team's unexpected turnaround, were so excited they were nearly brought to tears. But they were quickly drawn to the commotion not far away. It turned out that the rookie boy was on the verge of death due to excessive blood loss. Alice, his face filled with grief and reluctance, could only watch as the boy closed his eyes. As evening approached, Alice and his team buried the rookie boy by the sea. They would carry on the mission of their fallen comrade, continuing to survive in this world. Suguru, not too far away, muttered "fool" under his breath and quietly left. The scene shifts to the other side of the city, where a giant Jack of Hearts card lit up, signifying the onset of the most brutal psychological warfare game. The game would have a total of 20 participants. According to the rules, each player had to guess the suit displayed on their collar. They couldn't use mirrors or resort to physical violence. The suits would change every hour. Those who guessed correctly could continue, while those who guessed wrong would be eliminated. Among the 20 players, there would be a major villain, the Jack of Hearts. The game would only end when he was eliminated. Since no one could see their own suit, they would need at least a partner. But almost everyone was meeting for the first time, so it was a challenge to trust each other completely. The silver-haired man, Taro, realized that he needed to observe everyone's actions and words. The Jack of Hearts, in order to harm others, would surely give himself away. As the game began, everyone had an hour of free time. Many people couldn't wait to start looking for partners. Then a gangster forcibly chose a seemingly weak chicken boy as his partner. The sweet girl, meanwhile, used her charm to gather everyone into a team, maximizing the chances to avoid betrayals. Her team grew stronger, and even Taro joined. The girl's strategy was to reveal their collar suit in front of many teammates, making it impossible for everyone to lie at the same time. As the hour was about to end, everyone entered separate rooms. They had to loudly announce the suit on their collars. At the end of the first round, surprisingly, everyone had guessed their suits correctly. The second round started immediately and the suits on the collars changed. The teammates had to read out each other's suits once again. The gangster was not happy with the chicken boy's attitude, lashing out at him physically. At this point, someone reminded him that the chicken boy could lie about his suit. After being bullied by the gangster again, the chicken boy finally said clubs, but the suit on the gangster's collar was actually diamonds. The gangster confidently entered the small room and said clubs to the air. The next moment, he was eliminated. This was the harsh reality of the survival game. One wrong step could lead to death. The 20 players started to dwindle. The sweet girl was all smiles. Since the chicken boy lied and got the gangster eliminated, she was sure he was the Jack of Hearts. So she encouraged her team to eliminate him. The girl in the yellow shirt immediately expressed her disapproval, but everyone else had their own thoughts and chose to stay silent. When the chicken boy, who had lost his partner, came for help, the sweet girl told him his suit was spades. Her teammates' faces changed slightly, but no one spoke up to correct her, because the chicken boy's suit was hearts. As expected, the chicken boy was also eliminated. Taro, who had witnessed the whole process, told his partner in overalls that everyone's mentality had changed since the girls' team started killing. The killings would only become more frenzied from now on. Compared to the two of them, the two-persons teams were actually more stable, like the well-dressed man and woman, and the long-haired man who loved to eat cookies. Sure enough, the sweet girl was up to her old tricks again. She suggested eliminating the yellow dress girl who spoke up for the chicken boy. The experience was eerily similar to past events. The sweet girl deliberately misreported the yellow dress girl's card suit, and just like that, another member was missing from her group. At this moment, a cold woman grew more and more anxious. She began to distrust everyone in the group. She even went to strangers for confirmation, but they purposely misled her about the card suits, and the cold woman believed them. As it turns out, she too was eliminated from the game. The seed of distrust had taken root in the sweet girl's group. As more and more members were taken out, the survivors were on the verge of collapse. A bald man hesitated when reporting his card suit, and the sweet girl privately signaled 2 other members to take him out. But by a strange twist of fate, the bald man also approached these 2 members, proposing to get rid of the sweet girl. But the next moment, the bald man and the sweet girl were seen together again, planning something evil. The intense deception was enough to make the 2 members question everything. They exchanged a glance and silently made a decision. When the bald man and the sweet girl deliberately reported the wrong card suits, the 2 chose to remain silent. As a result, both the bald man and the sweet girl were eliminated. After these events, the 2 remaining members of the sweet girls group could no longer trust anyone. Consequently, they were also eliminated in the next round. Out of the 20 participants that started the game, only 6 remained. Taro's temporary partner, the man in overalls, found the game too brutal. Even if he cleared the level, he didn't have the courage to face the next round. After reporting his card suit to Taro for the last time, the man chose to end his own life. Upon seeing his body, Taro realized he was in big trouble, because among the remaining 5, he was the only one alone. Taro tried to create discord among the others, but all attempts ended in failure. He could only explicitly reveal the long-haired man's card suit, hoping the latter would reciprocate. However, the man simply walked away, only to turn suddenly and say, "It's hearts." Taro immediately knew he was lying, so he tried his old trick again and approached the well-dressed woman who was getting food. After he reported her card suit, he asked if his own was the clubs, but the well-dressed woman left without a word. Now Taro was in trouble. He didn't know his own suit, but had to act as if he had everything under control. He was sure that the Jack of Hearts would make a move in this round. But who was this hidden villain? As the countdown began, everyone stepped into separate rooms. Taro, from the words of the well-dressed woman and the long-haired man, eliminated the options of clubs and hearts. The rest was a matter of intuition. After the countdown, the corridor was silent. Then a metal door was pushed open. Surprisingly, it was the long-haired man. After confirming there was nobody else, he couldn't help but laugh out loud. But the next moment, another door was opened. Taro walked out from his room and accused the man of being the Jack of Hearts. And even before he could defend himself, his teammates, the man in blue shirt and the well-dressed man, also came out. Both identified the long-haired man as the Jack of Hearts. Apparently, they had formed an alliance in secret because they found out that their teammate, the long-haired man and the store clerk, were secretly exchanging information using different flavors of cookies in the warehouse to represent different card suits. Before each round, they would brush past each other with a cookie to verify if their teammate was lying. The long-haired man had gained the store clerk's trust and persuaded her to eliminate the well-dressed man. He then used the wrong card suit to get rid of the store clerk. There was no doubt that only the Jack of Hearts could do such things. It turns out Taro had seen through all of his tricks a long time ago. He even guessed why the man in the blue shirt hadn't eliminated the long-haired man earlier. Being a staff member of the Game Runner, the Jack of Hearts had some information about this game world that they wanted. Unfortunately, they failed. The Jack of Hearts ended his own life as time ran out, and Taro, still looking calm and composed, gracefully walked out of the game field. The Jack of Hearts in the sky exploded with a loud bang. The scene then shifts back to Alice's side, where he and his companions had arrived in a remote, small town. They were taken aback to see bodies piled up on both sides of the road. They had no idea what had happened here. The place was eerily strange, with bodies strewn all over like a living hell. After some searching, they found a lone survivor. Unfortunately, he only had time to utter the word film before he passed away. Alice boarded a vehicle and discovered it was a photo development studio. He found the film and started the projection. The footage documented the man's journey through this dystopian world. To his surprise, Alice recognized his long-lost friend who also appeared in the film. It seemed that she had also been exploring this world all this time. The man then arrived in a community where it was rumored that a woman retained memories of a fireworks story deeply connected to their world. Just as he was about to start recording, a sudden barrage of gunfire came from outside. It was the King of Spades, and bodies started piling up quickly. The film abruptly ended. Alice and the others were still reeling from the shock when the King of Spades attacked again. They ran toward the forest in a frantic rush. Alice lured the King of Spades away and ended up fainting after falling down a slope due to exhaustion. When he woke up, he found a girl standing beside him with a bow. She directed him to his real lifesaver. Alice ventured deeper into the jungle and found that his rescuer was a Goonie, the biggest survivor and one of the founders of the organization Seaside. Known for his few words and ruthless demeanor, Aguni proposed a partnership to take down the formidable King of Spades. With no time for Alice to respond, he tossed a gun to him, symbolizing his formal induction into the group. The trio began their journey through the forest, encountering despondent players along the way. Alice felt pity for them, but the girl saw them as weaklings. She despised anyone who gave up easily. After all, she had lost more than just a leg in her fight for survival. Aguni found an excellent ambush spot in the forest, planning to kill the King of Spades there that very night. As night fell, Alice sat trembling with the gun by his tent. The King of Spades indeed approached, and Aguni initiated the ambush. However, despite being shot multiple times, the King of Spades stood back up, likely due to wearing a bulletproof vest. Alice was drenched in cold sweat, realizing he had been used as bait. Aguni offered no explanation and squared off against the King of Spades. The equipment disparity put them at a disadvantage, and Aguni was shot and fainted during the fight. The girl barely managed to rescue him, while Alice was blasted off a cliff by a hand grenade. When Alice woke up the next day, he found himself alone once again. He had no choice but to set off alone in search of Yuzuha. The deserted city was overgrown with weeds and littered with bodies. The steel structures, adorned with green vines, seemed particularly desolate. Alice, left with no other option, had to continue his lonely journey. Over on the other side of the city, Yuzuha was scouring for resources. During her search, she encountered a little boy in a residential home. He generously gave her all the remaining food he had, which deeply moved Yuzuha. Upon learning that the boy's parents had died and his visa in this game was about to expire, she decided to take him along to participate in the Queen of Spades game challenge, the nearest one available. Unexpectedly, they ran into Alice there. Knowing that Yuzuha excelled at physical games, Alice decided to try his luck, and, to his surprise, he was right. As all the participants took their places, the central screen began to explain the game rules. It was a turn-based competitive game where the red team, led by the Queen of Spades, challenged the blue team of 16. The boy, who appeared to be the weakest, was unfortunately chosen by the Queen of Spades to be the blue team's captain. Hence, the Queen and the boy were the kings of their respective camps. During the red team's offensive turn, they could disable a blue team member by tagging the symbol on their back. In the next turn, the tagged player would automatically become a member of the red team. The same rule applied when the blue team was on the offensive. The only exception was that the Kings could not switch camps. The game had 16 rounds, each lasting 5 minutes. The team with the most members at the end won, while the losing team faced extermination. Once everyone had their equipment on, the game officially began. The first round was the red team's attack, and the blue team's objective was simply to scatter and evade. The Queen of Spades team was clearly well-trained. Despite the limited 5-minute time frame, they were able to tag many blue team members. They used not only force in pursuit, but also psychological pressure, claiming that anyone who wanted to survive should willingly join their team. As a result, many of the fear-stricken players avoided Alice and Yuzuha to prevent getting tagged and switching back to the blue team. In this way, almost all the blue team's players became members of the Queen of Spades. After just 10 rounds, only Alice, Yuzuha, and the boy remained on the blue team. But they couldn't give up because the boy, as their king, couldn't switch teams. If the red team won, it meant the boy's death. Alice and Yuzuha exchanged a glance. It was finally the blue team's turn to attack. With their agility, they managed to bring back a few of their original teammates. But unfortunately, they were ungrateful and considered themselves part of the Queen of Spades team. Yuzuha recognized their intentions and quickly urged them not to join the Queen of Spades. She warned that doing so would only bring temporary victory, but they would face endless future games. Only by defeating all the cards, including the Queen of Spades, could they hope to return to the real world. But some voiced their doubts, arguing that the real world was full of deceit and betrayal. Perhaps this place was better for them to stay. Yuzuha admitted that she had harbored similar thoughts in the past, but despite its flaws, the real world was their home. Her words finally persuaded the team, but with the game time running out, how could they turn the tables? Alice came up with an idea. As the penultimate round approached, all the members of the red team began chasing the few remaining blue team members. Just when Alice was cornered and seemed to have no way out, he reached out and grabbed something. All of a sudden, he was hanging in midair by a chain, successfully evading the chase. Meanwhile, the final round had begun. The roles of attack and defense had switched between the red and blue teams. The members of the red team who had previously chased Alice now found themselves in a trap. With the combined efforts of their teammates, the score had surprisingly overturned in the last round. Aside from the Queen of Spades, the entire red team had been successfully converted and the blue team had won. Alice, still wanting to probe the Queen of Spades for information about the Gameworld, was unfortunately met with silence. The Queen simply advised him to clear all the games as quickly as possible, and he would naturally know the answer. Then, in front of everyone, the Queen of Spades leapt from the steel building and was eliminated. After this game, Alice was even more determined to clear all the levels and return to the original world with Yuzuha. As they walked and chatted, they surprisingly found a hot spring not far away. The two took the rare opportunity to bathe, each enjoying the comfort in different pools. Suddenly, Yuzuha called out from the next pool. Alice quickly ran over to see what had happened. 2 elephants had appeared on the shore, apparently having escaped from the zoo to bathe. After the initial surprise, they both relaxed and agreed to stay and enjoy the unexpected company, before heading to enjoy a watery hormone yoga session. Meanwhile, on the other side of the city in the Supreme Court, a bucket of concentrated sulfuric acid was slowly overflowing. The terrifying screams echoed throughout the hall. Apparently, the most brutal intellectual game was under play here, where the fate of the losing side was complete annihilation. According to the rules, each person chose a number from 0 to 100. The system would calculate the average, multiply it by 0.8, and the person whose chosen number was closest to the final number was the winner of the round. The loser would lose 1 point and would be eliminated after losing 10 points. Moreover, each time a player was eliminated, a new rule would be added. Taro could tell that the person presiding over the King of Diamonds was actually a very tough opponent. The first round of the game quickly began. The 5 players chose numbers slightly smaller than the median because the 0.8 factor caused quite a bit of deviation in the final result. The winner of the game was the presider who chose 29. Through the first round, everyone gradually understood the situation. If all 5 players choose 40, the average is calculated and then multiplied by 0.8, the result is 32. This means that the final result will always be smaller than the number chosen. This requires the player to predict the numbers chosen by others and then choose a lower number. The players who lost points began to have a bit of sulfuric acid poured into the balance above their heads, greatly increasing the psychological pressure on everyone. When the second round began, they all cleverly chose smaller numbers. However, the presider predicted everyone's predictions and won several rounds in a row. Finally, someone had had enough. Since the numbers chosen in each round were getting smaller, they simply chose the number 0. To everyone's surprise, the female player won this round. Everyone was incredulous and didn't understand why Taro chose the guaranteed losing number 100. Taro had his own calculation. He did this to break the habitual thinking of other people that choosing a small number would guarantee a win, and to disrupt the presider's winning streak. Sure enough, the female player who tasted the sweetness began to choose larger numbers. The two men who still chose 0 reached -10 points first. The balance above their heads slowly tilted, and droplets of sulfuric acid started to fall. The eliminated player couldn't help but burst into tears. Until a whole bucket of sulfuric acid fell, the screams of agony abruptly ended. Just like that, the two contestants were eliminated. The remaining 3 would continue the game. Among them, only one person was destined to walk out of the game alive. 2 players had already been eliminated from the game, and as a result, 2 new rules were added. If 2 people choose the same number, they lose 1 point directly. If a player correctly guessed the final number, the loser loses 2 points. In this round, all 3 chose 0. Everyone lost 1 point. Now Taro was already at -9 points. The choice of this round was crucial. After pondering for a moment, he chose the number 23. The final result was revealed. Taro guessed the correct number and triggered the added rule. The female player lost 2 points and was eliminated. She incredulously asked Taro why he was so accurate. Taro explained that it was undoubtedly beneficial for the presider to choose 0, as for the female player's number it wasn't hard to guess. She would definitely choose a number over 50 to avoid the same number as the 2 men, and she wouldn't choose a too obvious multiple, or a simple integer or prime number. After excluding these, there weren't many numbers left. The female player despaired after hearing this. Eventually, she was completely dissolved in the sulfuric acid. The game added a new rule. If someone chooses 0, then the person who chooses 100 will be the winner. Now the presider was at -6 points. If this additional rule hadn't been added, he would have remained unbeatable by always choosing 0. Yet the presider was the designer of this game, showing that he was trying his best to maintain the fairness of the game. After figuring out his character, Taro gave up and announced that he would choose 100 in each round, leaving the fate of the living to the presider's decision. This immediately plunged the latter into his memories. The man was a lawyer in the real world. His company was involved in a pollution incident that resulted in a loss of life. The presider suggested that the boss pay compensation, but was scolded by him. This world is inherently unfair. Money is not to be paid to the poor, but a tool to deal with them. The past replayed in his mind. He was already tired of this unfair world and just wanted to end it all. So the presider directly chose the number 0 and gave the victory to Taro. But Taro just sneered, believing that this victory was not given by others. A new day dawned. In the game of the Queen of Clubs, Hikari and Anne crossed paths unexpectedly. These 2 powerful players allied and unsurprisingly won the game. One by one, the fluttering game flags burnt and fell, signifying the second stage of the game was nearing its end. During a scout in the desolate city, Alice ran into the familiar faces of Taro and Suguru, who he hadn't seen in a long time. Suguru, who knew his end was near, decided to take some people down with him and yearned for a hearty gunfight with the 2. But Alice couldn't bring himself to kill his own kind. He deliberately exposed himself, stating that if Suguru wished to kill him, he should just shoot. At least in his last moments, he wouldn't act against his conscience. These words moved Suguru, and he couldn't pull the trigger, resonating with Taro too, who had just experienced a game about human nature and was slowly changing his mindset. Just then, Yuzuha suddenly appeared. The hatred in Suguru's heart reignited. Unexpectedly, at the crucial moment, Taro stepped in and took a bullet for Yuzuha. The seriously injured Taro told Alice that he used to think all kindness and pity were false, but since meeting Alice, he had felt the power of goodness. So he wanted to be that kind of person too. While Alice and Yuzuha were getting emotional, a flag with the King of Spades floated down from the sky. The King of Spades hunter, who had been slaughtering players since the beginning, was still a formidable presence. During their escape, Alice ran into Hikari and Anne. The 4-player group reunited. Taking down the King of Spades had become everyone's first priority. Many players began to retaliate sporadically, even driving a vehicle to hit him. But he was too strong. Despite their best efforts, they only managed to rip off his damaged coat and mask, revealing a face filled with murderous intent. Gunshots rang out again, and Alice and his group had to hide in a tunnel. There, they met Aguni and the archer girl. Aguni counted the remaining ammunition of everyone present and reminded them to conserve. Hikari brought out a homemade kerosene bomb made by Taro. Alice had a plan. He saw a pharmacy across the street. If they could fill it with aerosol smoke, it would greatly enhance the power of the kerosene bomb. But someone would have to lure the King of Spades there. Aguni wanted to be the bait, but Yuzuha thought the success rate was too low for one person. It would be better if everyone acted together. They set off immediately, ready to face the King of Spades head-on. However, the enemy's strength was beyond imagination. Even without sophisticated equipment, his combat skills were exceptional. Yuzuha and the others quickly started getting injured. Now, not to mention leading the enemy deeper, even escaping was becoming difficult. On the other side, Alice had already reached the pharmacy and started spraying gas. After setting everything up, he was waiting for the enemy to fall into his trap. However, he found that almost all of his teammates had fallen. He had no choice but to reveal himself and lead King of Spades into the pharmacy. But the cunning King of Spades smelled the trap and hesitated at the entrance. Fortunately, at the critical moment, Aguni used all his strength to push the King of Spades into the store. He then jumped out of the window with Alice and detonated the kerosene bomb with his handgun. When everything settled, Aguni got up from the ruins and walked over to the dying King of Spades, finishing off this evil player for good. The King of Spades level was finally conquered. Only the last game of Queen of Hearts remained. Yet, Alice's teammates were all severely injured and unable to move. Anne had died due to excessive blood loss. Alice had no choice but to support the lightly injured Yuzuha, slowly heading towards the game field. Unexpectedly, the Queen of Hearts was the black-haired woman who had appeared after the end of the first stage of the game. This game was called Hammerball. The Queen of Hearts introduced that there was no winning or losing in this game. As long as Alice and Yuzuha successfully completed 3 rounds without quitting halfway, they would pass the game. The three stood on the artificial turf on the rooftop, surrounded by luxurious and warm decorations, without feeling any danger. The Queen of Hearts then started the first round of Hammerball. The players only needed to hit the ball along a preset trajectory. Alice watched the Queen of Hearts play 1 round and gradually grasped the knack. It was much simpler than he had imagined. Just as he was preparing to finish 3 rounds in one go, the Queen of Hearts suddenly sat down at the edge of the court, inviting them to have afternoon tea. Alice was too naive and actually ran over. The woman was clearly good at playing mind games. She mentioned that this world was inescapable and brought up the 2 deceased friends that Alice cared about most, managing to infuriate him with her words. Luckily, Alice regained his calmness at the last moment. If he killed the Queen of Hearts now, the 3 rounds of Hammerball would never be completed. But the woman didn't plan to let him go. She continued to speak in a bewitching tone, claiming that she knew the truth about this world. This was the goal that Alice had been pursuing, but he fell for her trap again. The woman turned out to be a hypnotist. Alice's psychological defenses were broken, and he fell into the illusion constructed by the hypnotist. The Queen of Hearts said that the game world was actually all imagined by Alice. In reality, he was just a good-for-nothing who only knew how to play games, and his life was meaningless. Under such continuous negative attacks, Alice was on the verge of collapse. The woman took out 2 pills and ordered Alice to swallow them. At that moment, Yuzuha entered from outside the door, trying to wake up Alice, but to no avail. Out of desperation, she knocked over a cup of water, picked up the shards, and cut her wrist, hoping to awaken Alice with her own death. Despite Yuzuha's weakening breath, she mustered enough strength to tell Alice not to obsess over the truth of the world. All they needed to remember was that they had once supported and loved each other here. Eventually, Yuzuha's efforts successfully roused Alice, and the surrounding illusions began to fade. The scene returned to the rooftop's Hammerball court. Alice demanded to continue the remaining 3 rounds. The Queen of Hearts no longer played tricks. As night fell, they finished the 3rd round of Hammerball. After congratulating Alice on his victory, the Queen of Hearts logged out the next moment. Now, all levels of this game world had been conquered, and brilliant fireworks lit up the city sky, illuminating it like daylight. An ethereal voice then asked all surviving players if they chose to become citizens of this world and gain permanent residency. Aguni and the archer girl declined, as did Hikari and Taro. Only the well-dressed man and his partner, who won in the game of guessing the suits, chose to stay. Alice, on the other hand, held Yuzuha's hand. Their answer, of course, was also rejection. In a blink of an eye, they returned to that ordinary afternoon. On the busy streets of Shibuya, Alice and his friends were frolicking. Familiar figures flashed in the crowd. They had all brushed past each other at the same time and place. Suddenly, a dazzling light flashed across the sky. A few seconds later, a massive explosion occurred in Shibuya. Half of the city was instantly reduced to ruins. The news quickly reported that it was a meteorite from space that had struck the ground. It turns out those who survived the disaster were the final survivors from the game. Alice's brother visited him in the hospital and mentioned that his heart had stopped for a minute during the rescue. This made Alice feel poignant. He had only struggled on the brink of death for a minute, yet it felt like he had been struggling in another world for a long time. When Alice and Yuzuha met at the hospital, he felt an unprecedented familiarity. He inexplicably approached her and invited her for a walk. Yuzuha happily accepted his invitation. The two walked in sync towards the backyard, just like a couple who had been in love for many years. The sun shone on the green grass, a world apart from the previous game world. At that moment, a gentle breeze blew, scattering the poker cards on the table, leaving only the last joker card. It seemed to be smiling at the world, as if telling everyone that all the brutal survival and death were just jokes in its eyes. What would happen next could be the most terrifying, or perhaps this world was a new game. This is Daniel CC Movie Channel. Stay safe and enjoy your day.